Good. All right, I think we might be rolling. Let's see what happens over here. All right. All right, I think that we're all set to go. Everything seems to be working properly, which is always nice on a Sunday morning. All right. Got a lot of people in chat so far, which is nice. Glad to see you. Hope you guys are having a good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on where you're at. I see Texas, Quebec, Sweden, Norway, UK. Let's see here. What else have we got? More UK, Czech Republic, Italy, Kentucky, Arkansas, Thailand. Phil Morris says Shadespire. How exciting. Oh, yes. California, Jakarta, Japan, Ottawa, the Netherlands. Let's see here. Got somebody in California, Denver, Sweden. Jez Hunt says 2 days in a row. Adam, you're spoiling us. Hello from Newcastle. So, yeah, about that. So, figured out what the problem was. For those of you who don't know, yesterday I went live. Normally, the patrons, I have this patreon.com/tabletop minions, which I made a thing for. Look at that right there. A little kind of lower third doohickey. Gets right down here. Anyway, so normally I do a special live show for patrons, the Uncle Adam's Irregulars, who are the $4 a month people. And those usually happen the once per month. It's on the Saturday that's closest to the 20th of the month. And I launched it yesterday, and YouTube had changed where it hides some of the little buttons that makes it private or makes it public. And I missed one. So normally about 25 to 30 people are in the chat and watching it live, and then we have a little bit more, there's a lot less kind of going by in the chat. I think at the highest yesterday it was about 275. So I figured out where the extra thing happened and where it has been hid. So yeah, that's kind of hopefully going to be able to fix next month. But for right now, this is a normal every other Sunday show, normal-ish. I've got some new stuff that I got on Friday afternoon from Games Workshop. I'll show you the box. It's called Shadespire, and it's coming out sometime in October. I don't know actually when yet, and I don't know how much money either. But it is a Age of Sigmar-based kind of board game. It's a gateway game, which is why I was interested, which is why I reached out to them and said, hey, if you want to send me a copy, I can talk about it and stuff, because I've played it now twice. I played it when it was still in beta back in May at a distributors conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and then I played it at Gen Con. Actually, Eddie from the community site and from Twitch, he gave me the demo. We had a meeting and stuff, and then after we came back to the convention center, and then he gave me a demo, and I think it's going to be really kind of interesting, and I think it's interesting what they're doing. It's another vector to get people into the game. So anyway, we'll talk about that in a little bit. What else have we got here? Scotland, Nova Scotia. VJ Morph says, haha, great to hear you got that sorted, Adam. Yeah, there's just, when you're setting up a live stream, there's like the basic information, and then there's the advanced information. And the advanced information is where I used to have to go in and check a bunch of, or uncheck a bunch of boxes to say, don't, notify, don't do this, don't do that, don't do all this junk. And then when I post the show and start the show, the patrons have to actually go to the post in patreon.com, which is kind of behind a firewall or a paywall or whatever, which is the point of the support thing. And then they get the link, and then they can see it. but it's not posted in the normal YouTube stuff. Well, as it turns out, they took one of the like little checkboxes and put it in the basic information section. So I went through and checked a whole bunch of different boxes saying no, 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 but I forgot to make it unlisted. It was still technically public, so it's kind of weird. YouTube is weird. Google is weird. If you've been around for any amount of time, you'll know that they like to make changes and not tell anybody, and it's what we have to do to keep using their generally kind of amazing products. I mean, right now, I'm talking to people in Jakarta and Australia and all kinds of stuff, and I'm sitting in my dining room, with my coffee, and that's not something you could do 10 years ago, really. You know what I mean? So I guess we have to kind of take the good with the bad. Let's see. VJ Morph asks, how did the priming go, Adam? I will be showing you guys that. It went pretty well. It's unseasonably warm right now here in Wisconsin, but yesterday, for being as hot as it was also really dry. So if it's too dry, priming can be problematic because the particles of paint will sometimes dry in midair just before they hit the thing, and then you get kind of fuzziness. If it's too wet, it causes it to be tacky and weird. Yesterday was just about perfect, actually. So, because what we consider dry in Wisconsin, like parts of the American Southwest, consider to be a very, very humid day. Like we never, like in the winter, sometimes we get down below 20% humidity. And I've talked to friends of mine from Utah who are like, wow, we almost never get above 20% humidity. So, that's how that works. Let's see here. Hey, from Newcastle, Australia, watching and painting some Necromunda Eschers. Cool. Torch asks, are the minis painted yet? No, they will be. I will begin painting them after I get back from lunch with the in-laws. So probably around 3 o'clock my time is when I will start painting, but they are primed and ready to go. Hello from Budapest. Thank you. Let's see. Hey, Adam, in the foothills of the Rockies in Cochrane, Alberta, driving into work, listening. Oh, well, I hope that I don't cause any kind of problems with your driving. I appreciate it. What else have we got? Caspian asks, do you even need to prime the Shadespire, guys? Well, I do, because I kind of prefer to do that. And you can't see it now, I don't think, really. Well, here, let me just switch to that second camera. So here's the guys as they stand currently. When they come out of the package, they're on sprues that are the Stormcast guys are blue, and the corn guys, of course, are red. Now, if you look, I may have painted these even better than I thought. So you may say to yourself, well, geez, Adam, you didn't do anything to these guys. They're still red. Well, yeah, what I did is I used a red oxide sandable auto primer from Duplicolor. But as it turns out, like you can maybe see a little bit of the red in the middle there, but I sprayed them real well. I have a tendency to not just spray my models like from above. I also, after they're kind of, after 10 minutes of them being sprayed from above, I then flip them over onto their backs and then spray them again, and I let that sit for 10 minutes, and then I flip them over on their fronts and spray, because there's always something like underneath where the color won't get properly. Anyway, these guys are normally bright red in the box, and these guys are blue, which you can still see some of the blue there, but I've gone over and painted them and primed them with brown, because brown is a good base color to put gold over. So some people might decide, well, I'm just going to take gold paint and paint all the places on the blue Stormcast where I want them to be gold, and then I'll just leave the blue to be blue, which makes sense. But I don't know. I always want to have a decent surface to paint on, and painting directly on the plastic is not great. Plus, like I said, because I'm going to be painting them gold, I don't want to have to put gold over blue. I want to be able to go through and put, gold, which is a warmer color, over a warmer primer. I mean, you can still see here, if I kind of tilt it a little bit, she's still got, and she's not in focus, but she's still got a little bit of blue that I sort of missed, even though I tried to spray underneath and get everything. All that stuff that you might end up missing in little crevices here and there, you just go back and fix with a brush. Like, see right underneath the shield a little bit there, underneath kind of between by the loincloth and the rear end, there's just a little bit of blue left. That's just partially because I was using a rattle can. Like I said, it was a good day for it, and I thought I'll just crank them out quick. If I would have done these these units with Airbrush, it would have been, I probably wouldn't have missed anything, because when you're doing it with Airbrush, you're, instead of spraying, the models on top of a cardboard box out in the driveway, you're holding them usually like on some sort of a, like I've got them on a pill bottle, and I'm spraying very close, and you can get really in there and see what you're doing. I just decided to use the rattle can. So the brown that I used in this situation, this is the Rust-Oleum instead of Krylon, dark brown camo, but it sticks really, really well to plastic, which is why I used it. And then this is, like I said, Duplicolor red oxide auto sandable automotive primer. And sandable automotive primers also work really great for models because they're very thin, and they leave a nice surface, and they do stick pretty well as well. The other trick is I primed these guys yesterday afternoon, and the reason I didn't paint them last night was twofold. One, I had a game of Age of Sigmar at my local shop, so I wanted to, so I went and did that and had a good time. And then the other thing is that after you prime models, you usually want to let them sit for a good 12 hours if you can, because you really want the primer to cure. A lot of times when I hear people and they say, well, I'm having some real trouble with my models, and it's tough because the primer gets rubbed off. I always ask first, how quickly did you start trying to paint after you're primed? Because it's important to let the primer really kind of cure and settle. So, hey, I see Mr. Matthew Sears poking his head in from Cincinnati. Hope you guys are having fun. Let's see here. Brew Geek number 1 says, Wisconsin. I love New Glarus Brewing. New Glarus is a beer company in Wisconsin, and they just sell in Wisconsin pretty much. So, like, if you're not in Wisconsin, it's hard to get, or almost impossible to get the stuff without coming to Wisconsin. They make a bunch of different beers. I know my wife is a big fan. Fat Squirrel, Spotted Cow. You can find those pretty much all over Wisconsin. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. Totally Naked, something blonde. There's a lot of different beers they make. Sean Kavanaugh says, I'm working gold over chocolate brown right now. Yeah, that's basically this. This is basically a dark chocolate brown. Here it looks, at least on my screen, it looks more like a regular chocolate brown, whereas here it looks to me like a dark chocolate brown in real life. But yeah, painting gold over that, over any kind of chocolate brown, really helps, because any spots that you miss with the gold, like if I'm painting the gold in and I miss any spots, then it just becomes a dark, warm shadow. Whereas if you painted it, the gold over black should be true neutral, but it has a tendency sometimes, especially when paired with a warmer color, to look cool. So if you've got like a kind of an odd sort of cool shadow, it's just easier, I find, to put gold over brown. With these guys, the Corn Bros, my plan is that now I've got them primed. There we go. I'm going to be doing all the skin tones and leaving the red on their pants and their armor and stuff like that. So I could have sprayed them like skin tone and then, worked from there. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to, man, it's camera today. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use the red so it was standard in all their stuff. And then I'm going to make their skin tones different. I'm going to have some of them darker, some of them lighter, that kind of thing. But yeah, so like I said, there's the 3, Stormcast. This one is the woman. I forget her name. You can still see, there's still a good amount of blue kind of there. That one's hard. I'm going to have to go back and fix that one. Just the levels and the undercuts. These were pretty easy to put together, frankly. This is the leader. He's got his helmet off, of course, because of reasons. And then this is the guy with the really big two-handed hammer. Like you'll notice, like their bases are already done. Like this was textured bases. This is what came with them. They're really great looking bases, and they paint up really well. If you go back through my Instagram or Facebook back to middle of August and look at Gen Con, I took pictures of my demo game of this that I had in the GW booth, and they had really nicely painted up stuff for these. And like I said, those bases are great. I wish that they made. Sometimes I wish they made all their bases like that, but it'll be interesting to see. When this comes out, and I don't know if it's right away at launch or if it's shortly after launch, they will also be producing, and they've announced this already, so if you've been paying attention, they'll be producing a Death faction and Oryx. So what I don't, and I don't know this for sure yet, but my suspicion is they will come in small boxes, kind of like the Blood Bowl teams. So you'll get anywhere from 3 to 5, maybe as many as 6 models in that box. That'll be the faction. Plus, you'll also get the cards that come with the faction, and then you'll just be able to add that to the base game, and then now you've got another faction you can play with. So yeah. Let's see here. VJ Morph says, wish I could get my wife to drink beer. When we first started dating, actually, she was not interested, and now she's become quite a beer enjoyer. Like lots of fancy, microbrews and stuff like that. Matthew Sears says, okay, back to vacation. Have a good time in Cincinnati. Let's see here. Uncle Adam, are all of the Shadespire minis brand new sculpts? Yes. Every single one is a completely new sculpt. And that's because they're also like, they're relatively easy to put together. They call them the push fit type. They don't technically need glue. They can just be pushed together. I mean, that's one of the benefits of this is if you're a starting out person, or if you're giving this as a gift to a starting out person, because the Stormcast are blue and the Khorne guys are red, they don't technically need to be painted. They're easy to differentiate. It's not gray on gray. And all you need to do is clip them off the sprues and just push them together. And that's, again, another kind of barrier to entry that they're hoping to hurdle. So that's kind of a benefit, and that's why they did that. But yeah, they're pretty easy to put together, but they're all completely new sculpts. Let me see here. What else have we got? Did you not think about the GW Retributor spray? It's actually a phenomenal spray. I have not tried the GW Retributor spray. The Retributor spray is the gold spray. And when I stopped into my local shop yesterday, they didn't have any. So I was like, well, yeah, I've wanted to try it. I've got to admit I'm a little concerned about sometimes painting over gold, at least with my own skill level. So yeah, my plan is to, with these guys, be able to paint the gold area is gold and the other area is not gold, especially on the shield. Like if I sprayed her completely gold and then I had to paint the blue over it, then it becomes kind of difficult. So, but that's maybe just me. I've not yet used the Retributor spray, but I'd like to get a hold of it. But yeah, like I said, my local store didn't have any. They had Lead Belcher, but I think it was a really old can of Lead Belcher. So I was like, well, from what I understand, they are going to release War Scrolls for all these figures in the game too, so you can then bring them into Age of Sigmar. If you watched the show yesterday, actually, it was funny because going through the box, which I'll kind of do now, they had a thing on this side. They had a thing in there saying, "Oh, hey, well, now that you're playing Shadespire and you got these models, you might want to look into Age of Sigmar." So there's like a little card in there that does that. So I've already opened this yesterday, but I'm just going to kind of go through. Tommy T, Uncle Adam, please show the side of the box. I spotted skeletons yesterday. Well, let's see here. We've got, that says the Shadespire fast-paced game of tactical arena combat. There's, that looks like a Stormbro. I don't see any skeletons here. No, I don't see any skeletons on any of the sides. Now on the back, so the back basically shows you what you get in the game. You've got these 2 tiles. This is hard to do backwards. You got 2 tiles, and they're both double-sided. So you can put them together kind of however you want. Each player gets to flip one whichever way. And they don't have to go together equal like this. The hexes need to match up, but you could have one like slid way over, so that they were like... So they don't have to be perfect like this. They could be slid way over like that. And if they do that, then you can just... You've got like a little kind of a hot gates sort of bottleneck there, and that could be part of your strategy. There's a card for each of the figures. Here you can see the blue and the red. But there's a card for each figure. It's a double-sided card, so you can flip it over. And as certain things happen to that each model, they will become inspired or enraged or something, depending on their army. So their stats change. There's, see here down over here, they're showing you how easy it is to put them together. They just press together, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of cards, construct your deck, which I looked a little bit into the rules about what that all means. Comes with some custom dice, which normally I'm not a fan of, but they kind of make sense in this context. Going the wrong way. It says here it's 2 players, 30 minutes, ages 12 and up, set in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar realms, made in the UK, so if that means something to you. But yeah, and it says 3 Liberator figures, 5 Blood Reaver fighters, 8 fighter cards, 1 for each, 2 double-sided game boards, 96 upgrade, ploy, and objective cards, 126 tokens. There's a lot of tokens. 8 Warhammer Underworlds dice, a 32-page rulebook, and there's also a quick start sheet. So, let me open the box and see what we can find. It's a sturdy box. Okay, so here's our quick start sheet. So it's double-sided, and it just basically tells you very quickly how to get into the game. Again, because they're looking at this from the aspect of being from the aspect of this being kind of, again, potentially a gateway game, a starter game, an introduction type game into the world of, not just regular board games like Sorry and Monopoly. This is starting to show you, okay, here's your people, and the cards match the people, and then you've got stuff, and here's how things move on the hex board and junk like that. So you've got that going on. Let me see. So then this is the main book, 32 pages. It's got this thing on the front there. On the back, it's got reference, which is actually kind of nice. There we go. So the reference is kind of helpful. And this is the card I was talking about before. This was just the beginning. And now, if you're interested, look at all that stuff. Oh, yeah, fighting epic battles in an age of unending war. And then, so yeah, this is just basically kind of some advertisement to let you know, hey, you got this first taste, you might be interested in some other stuff. Over here is a packet that I haven't opened yet. This has got the boards in it. You can see the hexes. These special symbols here are where you can put the objectives in the different games. So there's lots of different scenarios and things like that, and you get to choose where the objectives go, and your opponent gets to choose where their objectives go, and that kind of stuff. But there's basically just 2 boards in here. Each of them is double-sided. From what I understand, down the road they may sell, if I remember correctly, I believe Eddie told me that they were planning to sell tile sets down the road too, so you just buy like some more tile sets and stuff. Also in this pack is many of these punch-out tokens. So these are like, I think these are wound tokens, if I remember correctly. These are some of the big objectives, and they're numbered. So 3, 4, 2, 1, that kind of stuff. And you put those down on the board. I'm going to put this over here. Here are the dice. There are defense dice and attack dice. I believe the black dice are the defense dice and the white dice are the attack dice. And I was talking about how I like, a lot of times I just don't really dig, those types of dice. I don't like the normal, I don't like custom dice too frequently in miniatures games. I think it's just silly. In this situation, it makes sense. The reasoning is that, like, on these attack dice here, and if you can see it, so you see that weird symbol there. What that means is that you hit if you have at least one person who is also one guy from your team who is also adjacent to your target. So if there's you and there's a bad guy and there's another guy from your team also adjacent to that bad guy, with this, you would actually get to hit. If you were the only person who was adjacent to the bad guy you were trying to hit, this would be a miss. Now you're saying, well, why is that important? Because this symbol is the same symbol, but it has 2 semicircles. So what do you think that means? That means you're only going to hit if you have 2 adjacent friendly models to the enemy model. So trying to work those into numbers, like, oh, well, that's a 5 versus a 6. I mean, there's 6-sided dice. Sometimes the iconography can be very helpful, and you can go, oh, okay, cool. Whereas I think sometimes, like in games like X-Wing, those are, I think, 10-siders or 8-siders? No, they're 8-siders. So they're 8-siders, and so you've got some misses, you've got some hits, and you've got some crits. That could just be some dice ranges. 1 to 4 is misses, 5 through 7 is hits, and 8 is a crit. I mean, that's not difficult. Here, you've got, you could do the same thing. Obviously, you could say, well, this means this and this means that, but sometimes trying to get the information across on it is a little bit more difficult. Some of these are hammers, and some of these are swords. Well, if you don't have a hammer, then a hammer counts as a miss, and if I remember correctly. And if you have swords, then your hammer's not going to hit, that kind of thing. So I get the point in doing it this way. So it kind of makes sense there. Here are some of the cards. Somebody asked me before, whether or not, I think I saw something in the thing. Someone asked me before that whether the cards are supposed to be normal size so you could sleeve them, and I believe that I remember hearing that that was the case. Yeah, but they're supposed to be normal sized. I don't have Magic cards around here that I know of. I don't really play Magic, so I don't. But yeah, so like this is. Let me try to get this a little closer. So this is one of the cards. It doesn't want to focus. I think it's focusing my face. Well, anyway, there we go. Severin Steelheart. And it's got his stats for his broadsword, and how far he can move, and what his defense is, and how many wounds he's got, and some information. It's got a little picture of him up there, so you can see which one of the guys he is. So that's helpful. And then on the other side is Steelheart Inspired. So basically, there's certain benefits, certain things that can happen in the game that can cause you to be able to flip over. Like, if I remember correctly. Prime Steelheart is. I don't remember how it tells you when you're supposed to flip him over or not, but there is definitely a thing that makes that happen. Then there are multiple decks in here too. So the cards, it can be a deck building game a little bit. The way it works is, so like this card here, Great Speed. Okay, you'll notice up in this corner, not this corner, that corner, if you could see it, not in focus. My face is causing the focus. So this card can be used by any faction. That's what that symbol means, which you can't see. Hang on, maybe I can put it over here. So Great Speed, there we go. This warrior is as swift as a loosed arrow, +1 move. So that's a benefit that you could have. But it'll work on anybody. That's what that symbol right there in the middle means. Whereas this one, Eternals, you'll notice it has a Stormcast icon right there. So that means this only works on Stormcast. There's information in the book about what your deck, like you have, it comes with decks that are pre-built for each of the two factions. So you don't have to, sit down and initially start to figure out how to build a, like this is the Blood Reaver one. And it says right on it, open this when you play your first game. This pack includes fighter cards, an objective deck, and a power deck for the Blood Reavers. Now, after you've played several games, evidently, what you're supposed to do is then open this one. Don't open this until you have played a few games. This pack includes extra objective cards and power cards that you can use to construct new decks for each warband. So the question is, and I don't know the answer to this yet, is this going to be a little bit like X-Wing? In X-Wing, sometimes you buy a ship that you don't want to necessarily field, but there's a card or two in that ship that you want to use on other ships. I haven't played X-Wing in a long time, and I've only played competitively like twice. But I do know that the Tantive 4, which was that big honkin' ship, had the C-3PO card in it, and a lot of people wanted the C-3PO card and did not particularly care about the big ship. I bought it because I thought the super big ship was cool, and it used to be in the background of my studio shot when I was in the old studio for my videos. Excuse me. And it will end up in the background again once I get everything finished down in the basement, along with Cthulhu and an AT-AT. But I bought it because it was cool, but then I did use C-3PO quite a bit. So I don't know if it's going to be one of those situations where, well, I bought the Auric faction because I really want one of the cards that will work with any faction that's in that box, so I can use it with my Stormcast. I don't know if you're going to have that kind of thing going on or not. I kind of hope not, because that chasing those cards, at least personally, sometimes bothers me, but we'll see. But there are definitely also cards in there that only work with that particular faction. So there's that. There's also in here a whole bunch of baggies, so that you can put all your tokens and cards and junk and all that stuff in, and they don't just fly all over the place every time you open the box. So pretty much that's about it. The big thing of tiles with the tokens and that stuff. Quick reference guide, 32-page book. So the 32-page book, let's go through that maybe a little bit, so it's got a bunch of fluff and story about the city of Shadespire, the mirrored city. See that there. Whispers in Shadow, more fluff. And then this is the Warriors of Shadespire, and it shows all the different... So let's see. Oh, interesting. Okay, so it shows Steelheart's champions and the Far Striders. That's these guys over here, and these are the Blood Reavers. But then they also show Iron Skull's boys, orcs, so they'll be coming out. It shows the Chosen Axes, which means Fire Slayers, so there'll be a dwarven group. Sepulchral Guard, which death, and then also Spike Claw's Swarm, so the Skaven. So it looks like the factions after release are going to be orcs, death, Skaven, and Fire Slayers, whatever, dwarves. Gets into here and shows all the parts and the bits and all that jazz. And then there's the core rules. So it's, showing, it's being very descriptive and very, like, here's a picture of what game sequence looks like. It's like they're really pushing hard, and this is very well designed and everything. They talk about how to place the objective tokens and go through all that jazz. They talk about the cards and how you've got the Garrick's Reavers, the Steelheart's Champions, and the Universal cards, which can be used by anybody. Where's that? There was a section, deck building, here. Deck building is a significant part of Warhammer Underworlds, but it's a bit challenging until you've played a few games and are familiar with how everything works. This core set includes a ready-built objective deck and power deck for each player, so you can ignore this section until you've played a few games. When you've done so, and you are making your own decks, you must follow the following restrictions. Follow the following restrictions? All right. The power deck must include at least 20 cards, all of which must be unique, so you can't double up and stuff. It can include any number of additional unique cards, no more, so it must be at least 20, and you can have as many as you want beyond that. No more than half of the deck, rounding down, can be ploy cards. So that's a type of power deck stuff. The objective deck must always include exactly 12 unique objective cards. So your objective deck is always 12. Your power deck is at least 20, with only half or less being ploy cards. And then cards that you include in your decks must be usable by your warband, which means that they either need to have your symbol on them or the universal symbol. So that's kind of the deck building mechanics for that. What else have we got here? So yeah, it's just basically explaining everything. Lots of nice pictures and diagrams and stuff like that, showing you how to move and like what if you're driven back and what that's. So it's not a long game. The game that I played at Gen Con was probably less than half an hour. Basically, from what I've understood, they think you should be able to get away with probably best out of 3 in about 45 minutes. And from what I understand, the game is being designed to be sort of definitely, I don't want to say competitive, because you can obviously play it non-competitively, certainly. But they do want to also focus on the ability of making it a competitive game. I think they want to focus on, like, I've been told by people that they would love it to be something that's almost like a Friday Night Magic sort of a thing, where maybe, I don't know, Wednesday nights, everybody gets together and plays games. And like, how Friday Night Magic, if you've ever been to a game store that does that kind of stuff, on Friday nights, there's all these Magic players, and they have these kind of little mini tourneys and all that kind of stuff, and they're all together, and it's a thing. They want to be able to do this kind of thing, I think, to some degree, or at least push people to do that sort of thing a little bit with Shadespire. So yeah. Anyway, and I'm sure they'll probably have tournaments and things like that, organized play. So I'm sure that by the time we roll around to Adepticon, possibly even LVO, because this is, like I said, it's going to come out in October. Las Vegas Open is in January, so I bet there'll probably be some Shadespire stuff happening, tournaments and stuff like that at LVO. So I'll be at LVO, Las Vegas Open, for those of you that don't know. And that's coming up end of January. So if you're going to be at the Las Vegas Open, I hope to see you there. I'm going to be giving 2 seminars, actually, at LVO about YouTubing. One about the more technical stuff, like about photography and audio and video editing and all that jazz. And then the other one is going to be about strategy and marketing and branding and stuff like that. I gave the seminars, versions of those seminars at Adepticon, not 2017, but 2016. And it looks like I'll be giving those seminars also at Adepticon 2018. They reached out to me just recently, and so I'm going through that process right now. So looking forward to that as well. Let me see here. What else have we got? Let's go back and take a look at the chat, which I've been frankly ignoring a little bit because I've been showing you guys all this stuff, and I'll see if I can answer questions and do all that kind of stuff. Twerch says, sigh, if I buy another Games Workshop's box set, my wife is going to kill me. Well, this is a small one. I mean, it's not as big as a bunch of the other ones. I don't know the price yet, but it is physically small. It's probably about 9 by 12 inches and maybe 2.5 inches deep. So, you know, you got that going for you. It's only got 8 miniatures in it. Ted Moray says, I have an obscure question. Are there any kind of rules related to wildlife in Age of Sigmar or 40K? I mean, in Age of Sigmar, the terrain can have abilities. Sometimes, well, actually, I was playing a game yesterday against Sylvaneth players, so there were wildwoods popping up all over the board, and they have all kinds of strange and wondrous abilities. Like, if you fire off a spell near them, they will try to attack you, and stuff like that. So there's that, but not as such, generally. Not particularly. Ioki says, I miss the days when I could buy the whole game without having to buy expansions. Imagine Monopoly and have to buy packs to get the car or dog piece at Clue where you had to buy more murder weapons. Well, the trick is that this game it's a full game. You get two sides, so you and your friend, like that's what they're trying to aim for over here, is that this game, Shadespire, you can buy it. You've got two armies. You and your friend can play against each other. You can play until you get bored, then flip sides, and then play the other faction or whatever. It's got expansions if you want to go that way. Like if you're like, well, I'd really like to play some skeletons now or some Skaven, well, then you have to buy skeletons or Skaven boxes. But if you just want to play it as a game, everything you need is in this box. All the cards, all the dice, all the board, everything. It's completely playable out of the box. You only need to buy some of the expansions if you want to expand on it. Just like Blood Bowl. Blood Bowl comes with 2 teams, and it's playable completely out of the box. There's a lot of different games like Dreadball from Mantic. That's again also kind of a sports-ish type of game, but you get 2 teams in the box, and it's playable out of the box. A lot of those games are again, but then same with Dreadball. If you want to play different teams, you've got to go pick up other stuff. Also from Mantic, Dead Zone, again also pretty much playable right out of the box. Dungeon Saga. I own Dreadball and Dungeon Saga. I should really paint my Dungeon Saga. That's a really cool game. But anyway, so yeah, that's where that's at. I'm super keen on Jazz Hands specifically. Wait, what? Oh. No, I don't. Okay. Let's see here. Rumored price is $70. Seems a bit overpriced to compete against X-Wing or sit on a shelf at Target. I don't know if they'll have it at Target or not. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if I haven't. The rumored price is $70, if that's what you guys are saying, but I have not seen that anywhere. But we'll see how it goes. Let's see here. In the unofficial Shadespire group on Facebook, an image of the catalog with the game is leaked, and the price will be $69.99. Okay, well, that's probably the case then. I don't know. I mean, it's nice components. They're good figures. I mean, it's a full game. But yeah, against something like X-Wing. Of course, X-Wing, you just really only get 3 figures. You get 2 TIE fighters and an X-Wing, I think. So yeah, they're pre-painted, admittedly, but yeah. No, that was Chronic Toast. 40K had the old Death World random tables you could roll on for games. One of the options was native wildlife attacking you. That's true. We were talking about wildlife a little bit ago. There's some of that goes on. There's a lot of different games where there are different things that can happen on the board or things that can happen in the scenario. Song of Blades and Heroes has an add-on to the game, which is just another book that costs like $8. It's PDF. And it allows you to basically, you can make it so it's raining or there's like stinging bugs or whatever, and it affects both sides generally the same. There's kind of little random things that you can put in. Obviously, those things aren't things that usually excite the competitive type players, but there's not a lot of competitive players for, say, a game like for Song of Blades and Heroes, that kind of stuff. I can see that, but it's kind of just a fun little extra sort of flavor sort of thing that you can see in those situations. Let's see here. 12 Neef. Hey, man. As someone who's been to Adepticon and Nova, I would prefer to bring 3 to 5 models that can fit in a book bag than a giant heavy bag I'd have to check. I don't like multi-day game grand tournaments, so this is great. Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. I think that you're going to see, hopefully, like, I don't know what the plans are yet for, say, Adepticon and LVO, which I suspect to be the first places that you're going to start seeing Shadespire as a competitive game. But yeah, that is a good point. You know, just because like you'll literally just bring like a deck of cards or a couple decks of cards, your tokens, and your figures. Like you may bring the entire box, but well, you need the tiles too, I suppose, because you need to have well, I don't know. Maybe they'll have their own tiles there for you to play with. I'm not sure. It'll be interesting though. It's gonna be interesting to see how they're planning on doing the competitive stuff or the organized play. I could see myself at my local shop maybe playing some organized play. I don't know, man. I really don't like playing in tournaments. I'm not against people who want to play tournaments. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like that. I just don't like playing in tournaments because it causes me to care a little bit more about like trying to win, and then when I'm not winning, then I get stressed and I'm like, Urgh. And I like to have fun when I'm playing a game. You know, that's kind of the point. So, and I'm not saying that people who play competitively aren't having fun, but I'm not having fun when I'm playing competitively, so that's why I generally stay away from it. That being said, organized events where you just play like a round robin against a bunch of different people could be fun. I enjoy that. So yeah, definitely. Grumbleback says, I keep hoping for Dan Abnett to write an Age of Sigmar book. Yeah, that would be sweet. He's really good. Hey, Adam, are you looking forward to painting the models from the box? Yeah, I am. I'm going to be painting them, like I said, starting later on this afternoon. This gets done in another hour and 15 minutes, and then by noon, which would be another hour after that, we then go to my in-laws for lunch pretty much every Sunday, and then we're there till, I don't know, probably 2:30 or 3 o'clock, and then we'll come home, and then I will go down to the basement and paint a good portion of the rest of the day. I've got some other stuff to get done too, but I'll probably be doing a lot of that. So yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to painting them. I haven't painted any Stormcast or Blood Reavers, frankly, yet. All the stuff that I've been painting for my Age of Sigmar has been Chaos-based Nurgle, along with some Skaven and some Beastmen, and some Death stuff. So, yeah. So I've got 1,000 points of Chaos Nurgle done, painted. Been playing with it for months. I've got right around 1,000 points of Death built, much of it primed, some of it painted, but not finished. Then I have 1,000 points of Stormcast bought, and like none of it built or anything. So my plan was to make that my third army and everything. But now lately, like, I don't know, we'll see how painting on these guys go. I may actually want to do my Stormcast before I finish my Deaths. We'll see how it goes, but there's just some really great Stormcast models. I know that some people don't like them because they're basically just Space Marines, but I don't know. There's a bunch of those models that I really, really like. So we'll see how it goes. Alice in Wonderland, that's a good name, says Frostgrave has wandering monsters that can show up mid-game and attack whoever's closest. That's true. You know, there can be skeletons. There can be, I think, kobolds or gnolls or something like that. There's a bunch of different, you know, so those are also kind of a random sort of effect situation. Athenosis says, what's your opinion of Games Workshop? Oh, dang it. It scrolled. Hang on. What's your opinion of Games Workshop bombarding that's the fan base with different game systems? Kill Team, Shadow War, for Shadespire, Skirmish, etc. I mean, you don't have to buy them. So bombard is maybe a strong word, at least in my opinion. I think what they're trying to do is just make it so that getting into the game is much easier than it used to be. Getting into the system, getting into their particular hobby, getting into wargaming in general. It used to be if you wanted to play a Games Workshop game, you either had to play Fantasy or you had to play 40K. Both of them had a relatively steep kind of learning curve and also initial investment. And that was why the company wasn't doing great for a while. And then about 2 years ago, when they kind of switched up management and all that stuff, and they've now started to really get back into trying to actually talk to people who like their games and trying to actually make it easy for people to get into their games, they've been releasing a lot of these different kind of entrance vectors into the hobby. You know, this game in particular, let's say, someone buys it and plays it with a friend, and that friend is like, well, these little guys are really cool. What's going on here? And then they start doing some more research about it, and then they start to play Age of Sigmar, and they're building and painting their own stuff, and then they build a huge army, and then they get into it, and then maybe they move into, bolt action because they get interested in World War II, or they move into Infinity because they're interested in sci-fi. And, any situation, in my opinion, that can bring more people into the hobby is a good one. So if they're cranking out a bunch of different ways, because, you're right. There's Skirmish, which again is a very easy way to get into Age of Sigmar, which is a relatively easy game to get into it in the first place. But this is even a lower kind of setting of the bar so that you can kind of get into it a little bit easier. This is the same type of thing. You buy this box, you push the guys together, you clip them out, push them together, and then you start playing. And then eventually you're like, you know what? I don't like the blue and red. I want to paint them. So then you start doing some research on the YouTube, and you start figuring out, and you go from there. The thing that companies don't want to do, because they're obviously trying to make money, they don't want to be gatekeepers. If you are a gatekeeper, then people will stay out of that gate, which means they won't buy your stuff, which means you won't be able to pay your employees. As a person who's not a business particularly, I'm just very interested in, my mission is basically getting people into the hobby. I'm also very interested in, that's why I talk about games like Song of Blades and Heroes. It costs $8 as a PDF, and you use whatever models you want. It can get you into wargaming. The fact that the biggest company in wargaming is starting to make these games that are easy to get into really helps all of wargaming as well. I've talked to a bunch of people, and I'm stunned by this, but I've talked to a bunch of people in my travels and whatever who've come up and said, oh, hey, I really like your videos and I really appreciate what you're doing. And I say, thank you. And they say, oh, I got into 40K because of Dawn of War. So now for those of you didn't know, Dawn of War is a video game. It was a PC-based real-time strategy game. It was based off of 40K. It came out, 10 years ago or so. And there's people that started playing that video game, got really interested in the lore and all that stuff, and now they play war games. And I'm bumping into them at conventions like Adepticon. So, there's a lot of different vectors. The reason you see, I think, companies like Games Workshop constantly putting out, working with licensing deals on different developers to crank out different games, and even like mobile phone games, is it just helps to kind of get the word out there, because we have a difficult hobby that we're all interested in. Video gaming, in comparison, is relatively simple. You buy a PlayStation or a computer or whatever, you come home, you put a disc in, or you download something on Steam, and then you just start playing. You know what I mean? With us, even with a game like Shadespire, I'm pointing down here, but you can't see it, sorry. Even with a game like Shadespire, you've got to at least clip those little dudes out and push them together, and then read a bunch. So, yeah. I don't have a problem with them dumping this stuff out there so that they can get as many people into the hobby as possible. Like I said, they're the biggest ones out there, which kind of makes them, I don't want to say caretakers, but it does make them the biggest target for trying to get attention. So, in the hobby, I think it just makes sense. So, that's my opinion on that. And now I've locked up the chat thingy and it's not scrolling. Samuel Ashton says, Adam, I know you're a Death Guard fan. True. Do you like the new Typhus model or not? I personally don't. I kind of don't either. I sort of like my old one, and I don't know if it's just because I'm being nostalgic, number one. Or number two, I literally just painted him last month, so the old one. So I'm like, now they just released a new one? I'm not sure. I don't know which it is, but I just kind of, I'm not a big fan. To be fair, I'm not a very big fan of the Mortarion model either. Plus, he's $140, which is crazy. But I look at him like, I love, like, the Putrid Blight Kings. I love Glotkin. I love, Lord of Decay. Just Harbinger, like all these great models. But I even love the new Death Guard models quite a bit, generally. But I don't know. I think that I'm just being fussy about Typhus because I'm like, I just finished painting him. And I'm like, ugh, now there's a new one. But Mortarion, I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe the wings. I think maybe the wings don't just throw me off. Plus, he's another character that when you look at him and go, how am I going to get him from the store to home? Or the home to this? How am I going to travel with Mortarion? Like, he's floating on like a bunch of ribbons and like parchment and crap, and he's flying, and that looks great. But like him and Nagash and the Celestin Prime and a bunch of these other models, they're gonna break if you travel with them in any kind of way, in my opinion. So I'm practical that way, and it makes me think about that. Let's see here. Phil Morris. Fun fact: during the Bell of Lost Souls Gen Con Shadespire demo game video, Uncle Adam did a guest experience walk by in the background. Oh, I didn't even realize. That's interesting. There you go. What else have we got here? All right, so now I think we're caught back up again. Adam, do you have any thoughts on the Firestorm campaign released for AOS this week? I haven't looked at it yet. I've had a couple of people mention it, and I know I've seen it posted around here and there, but I haven't got a chance actually to look at. I didn't get a chance to do any hobbying this whole last week, just because of all the different crazy stuff going on lately. So I did not get any chance to do any hobbying, so I didn't get a chance to look into that either. But I'm interested in it. I definitely want to check that out. What else have we got here? Ted says, I would like to see an extensive set of Pathfinder/D&D style rules set in a sci-fi genre, specifically 40K. I think that there's a new 40K RPG coming out, because there used to be one from Fantasy Flight Games, but I think there's a new one coming out from somebody else. I cannot remember what it's called, or who's making it. But if you're into regular sci-fi and you're into Pathfinder at all, there's now a new game that they announced at Gen Con called Starfinder, Paizo Press did, which is basically Pathfinder in space, I guess. I'm not an RPG player, so I don't know anything much about it, other than the fact that they released it at Gen Con and sold out, like, super quick. So you may want to look into something like that. Starfinder is what it's called. And I cannot remember I swear there's a new 40K, not D&D, a new 40K RPG coming up soon, but I don't remember what it's called or who makes it. So I've got that going for me, which is nice. Hey Adam, I'm from Singapore. Would like to know what your opinion on Grey Knights is in the new edition. Got into the hobby this year and I'm loving it. I don't really know anything about the Grey Knights new model or new rules, so I'm not a good reference on that. I did buy a small box of not the Terminator models, but the Power Armor models for Grey Knights, because I'm going to eventually turn them into a Shadow War, Shadow War Armageddon army. And I've always loved the Grey Knight models since the relatively new release, with all the names and the etching and stuff like that. Their models, I think, are just great. But sadly, I don't know really much anything about their rules. I haven't even thumbed through the codex. So, Vengeful D20 says, I've seen a lot of people magnetizing Mortarion for travel. Yeah, that would probably make the best sense, is that you'd have to kind of basically dang near take him apart to be able to get him to go places and stuff. Yeah, I could see that. He's just, I don't know. Like I said, I think the wings are what bothers me the most, and he's not my cup of tea. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe eventually I'll get one, but I don't know. I've got to get Glotkin done first. If I want a big, cool, Nurgle type model, Glotkin's my boy. So yeah, definitely. What else have we got? A lot of the Death Guard stuff seems like it'd be really fatiguing to paint, says Hobo. I don't know. I mean, I like putting rust and grunge on vehicles and on models. I don't like my model. I almost never paint my models super clean. I always kind of distress them in some fashion. Even Space Marines, I want them to look like they're in battle at a time, not like they're just ready to go into battle and they've all been all polished. I want them to look like they're currently fighting. You know what I mean? So I have a tendency to do that sort of stuff. But, with Death Guard and Nurgle, anything in general, you kind of have to go a little bit above and beyond. It can be sort of problematic. It can take longer, obviously. I don't think I have a great way to show you. I did. I'll try to find it and put it up again at some point. But I did the fetid bloat drone from the new box set. That was the first model of the Death Guard from the new box set, the new big, Dark Imperium set that I actually painted, and I added him to my Chaos 40K army, and he was a lot of fun to paint, but he's distressed. There's the metal's all corroded and stuff, and there's a lot of pus going on and whatnot. And so I like doing that stuff. If you don't like doing that stuff, yeah, then those models probably do take a bit long. Let's see. Fancy Llama. I forgot the name of the company, but they make custom foam trays for 40K. I believe they made a new Death Guard one so you can fit Mortarion in it. I mean, you got Battle Foam, you've got KR Multicase. Those are the two big ones that I can think of in custom foam. I know there's a couple others as well, but those are the two big ones. So yeah, I mean, everybody does that. Well, not everybody. The big companies that make laser cut custom foam, they do generally find the big cool models that are hard to ship, and then they do it. I still it makes me a little nervous because they look. I don't want to say flimsy. They look delicate. Let's say that. That's a nicer word than flimsy. Let's see here. Hey, Adam, about to start doing some transport vehicles for 40K. Do you think it's worth getting a cheap airbrush to do them, as I've only done brush and rattle cans since I got back into the hobby? Yeah, honestly, for vehicles, airbrush is a good idea because rattle can, you can get away with rattle can. It can work out pretty well, but a lot of times if you want that kind of look where there's maybe some variation and you're not just painting it all blue or all red or whatever army you're painting, if you want a little bit of variation, a little bit of blending, even an inexpensive airbrush can, as long as it's gravity fed, you can do some pretty decent work with it. And so again, gravity fed is if my finger is an airbrush, the cup is on top up here that you put the paint in, and then gravity draws it down into the airstream and it blows it out. Siphon fed is like usually a glass bottle that gets stuck to the bottom, and then the air pressure goes through like that and fires it out. Siphon feed is great if you want to be constantly changing colors, and if you see guys who spray paint like t-shirts and stuff like that, they almost always use siphon feed because they can have a whole bunch of those bottles and just swap out colors. But for us, because we want to be shooting at lower PSI, then you want gravity feed. If you shoot at a lower PSI with an airbrush that has siphon feed, very frequently it will have a hard time actually getting the paint up out of the siphon action won't work as well because the PSI is lower. We want lower PSI because we want a bit more control, and we're also trying to not completely cover and saturate the model. Painters who do like t-shirts and stuff like that, they want to kind of soak the cloth a bit more, so they want to have a higher PSI from what I understand. So that's what I know pretty much about that. But yeah, I'm always a big fan of using airbrush if you can, especially on vehicles. Like with these guys, I primed these guys out yesterday because it was a lovely day to be outside. I had the paints ready to go. I had colors that were going to work, and it was, like I said, perfect conditions, so I did it. But generally, like if I would have been doing a vehicle, I probably would have, if I was going to do a vehicle, I might have done the base color, even possibly in rattle can, and then gone back and highlighted a little bit here and there with some airbrush. That's also a thing. But like trying to get like any kind of highlighting and stuff like that on a vehicle with a regular brush, not very easy at all. It's much easier to do it with an airbrush. What else have we got? Rumors that Shadespire is going to cost $70. Do you think it's worth the price? I think so. Yeah, I mean the models are very well done. Admittedly, there's not a ton of them, but it's also a two-player game, so it's not just like, oh, I have to buy a box and you have to buy a box if we want to play. I buy a box and then I can play with friends, or it's not a game where each of us needs to buy it. You know what I mean? It's a game where you've bought it and now it's the full game, and also it has the ability, because you start off with the decks that come with it. You start with the pre-made decks that are in the box, but there's a third deck that's in there too that says right on there, don't use this until you've played several games, and then you can kind of advanced rules or almost expand upon your decks with that third deck that comes in the box. So that's kind of cool. Let's see here. Michael says, get a good compressor if you're getting an airbrush. Airbrush isn't that important, but the compressor is. Yes, to some degree. Like my first compressor was from the hardware store. I had like a 2-gallon tank, and it was silent until the tank got pretty low, and at which point the compressor would kick in, and the compressor was crazy loud, and it would scare the pants off me. So I'd be airbrushing away, and it would be silent and silent. Then all of a sudden you hear this click, and then the motor would kick in and be like, "Wah!" And I would jump. And the cats upstairs would jump, and my wife would jump. But I mean, it always worked pretty well. The one issue I had was when it got really hot and humid one time in the house, there was a lot of condensation inside the tank. But if you've got your vapor trap or whatever it's called, moisture trap, set up properly on the compressor, then you just press the little valve on the button and you blow it out like a spit valve on a trumpet, and it works out fine. My current compressor is designed for airbrush. It's nice and quiet. It doesn't have a tank, so it's kind of constantly pulsing. Like if I stop spraying, it shuts up, and then as I'm spraying, it's like bzz, bzz, bzz. But it's very quiet, and that's kind of nice. But it was also 5 times the price probably. So yeah, there's that. What else have we got here? Thank Matthew. What else we got here? I'm looking for. There's a lot of conversation going on here in the chat. That's cool. I see JP Got Rockets, who I ran into at Gen Con. Fun. How you doing? Dennis Bauer. Victoria Miniatures make female Imperial Guard. Yeah, they do. I like those models. They're neat. They make a bunch of different stuff, actually. Rocky Mountain Air says bubbles mean blockage in the nozzle. That's about airbrushing. That's not about something else. But yes, when you're using a gravity feed brush and you're spraying and you're getting bubbling going on, then there's some sort of blockage, usually in the nozzle. It could be sometimes within the body, but it's usually in the nozzle. And then what you end up usually having to do is maybe just, what I end up usually having to do is either dunk the nose of the airbrush into some water and maybe give it a couple of hard squirts just of air, but not of paint. And I'll do that a couple of times, and then I'll spray onto a paper towel or something like that, and then check. If it keeps doing it, you can also, at the back of the airbrush, you can unscrew that nut that holds the needle in and kind of pull the needle out a little bit, fire some air through again, reseat the needle, retighten it, that kind of stuff. I keep my airbrush really clean, so I almost never have any kind of trouble like that. The way that I keep my airbrush clean is I store it in the ultrasonic cleaner in fluid. Like when I'm not using it, like right now down in the basement, it's sitting in water with a little bit of cleaning airbrush cleaner from Iwata, and it's sitting in the ultrasonic cleaner. And the next time I want to use it, I'll push the button and it'll vibrate for 3 minutes, the ultrasonic cleaner, and then I'll take it out and I'll put it all together, and then I'll go, and then when I'm done, I dump it back in there. It doesn't rust, so just made out of brass. So that's what I do. Other people don't like to do it and don't like to keep it in water or whatever, but I like to do it. Are airbrushes as picky as rattle cans when it comes to heat and humidity? I would say not particularly, no. No, I would say I don't think so. Not that I've noticed. To be fair, I mean, we've got an air conditioner, like a central air conditioning unit in the house, so it never gets as hot as it is outside, and it never gets as cold as it is outside. And the humidity stays relatively low in here, but not super crazy low. But yeah, generally not the same. I think it's rattle can, partially it's because of, I think, the propellant that can cause some trouble, especially with, like, if it's too cold, the propellant doesn't work as well as it should, and then the paint has a tendency to sort of splatter on its way out, which is why people will tell you sometimes if it's getting kind of closer and closer to being a little too cold to rattle can, you can heat up a bowl of water and then keep the rattle can in the bowl when you're not spraying, and then you take it out, shake, spray, and then you're waiting for it to dry. You put it back in the bottle of the bowl of warm water, and that can help the paint. But with the airbrush, I mean, if you're indoors, it shouldn't. Like, now, I've never airbrushed outside, so that's actually a very good question, to be perfectly honest, but generally not as much. P. Bradley says, hey, Uncle Adam, first time painting, Age of Sigmar Nurgle, and most of my models are coming out looking dirty rather than nurgly. Any tips for getting that swollen, infected look rather than dirty? Well, one way I have a tendency to do it, and I don't have any models here to show you, but one way I have a tendency to do it is I usually prime my Nurgle models like with one of the Krylon, greenish colors, like let's say maybe the darker green, and then I like to hit them from above if I'm using just rattle can. Then I'll spray them from above with lighter green. So now you've got this sort of like, it's lighter green here and it fades to darker green as it goes down into the recesses, and that can give it a bit of a swollen look. You could also do that with airbrush as well, just as easily. Actually, probably a little bit more easily. But then you're not outside having, enjoying the sun. Then I have a tendency usually to wash. Lately, my go-to wash has been, I forget what it's called, but it's a camo shade, they call it. It's a Games Workshop wash, and it's not like a bright green, it's more like a camouflage green. And then I use that. One thing that I do also is I have a tendency to use sepia washes a lot, because then that kind of you get some brown and stuff like that in the crevices, but it's not too dark brown. It's more of a warm brown, like almost a reddish brown. And then, so that's kind of an interesting color combination versus the green. And then you can go back and touch up some of the green areas, so that the green stays green, but the crevices sort of get the sort of reddish brown. And then the last thing is, if there's any bumps, this is a trick that I've been doing for a while. Any kind of bumps on the, like, little boils and pustules and stuff like that on the model, what I do is I take sepia brown, or even you could use like a brown, like an Agrax Earthshade or whatever, and I just get a bunch of it on my brush and I just touch the tip of, I don't have anything here. So, okay, let's say that this bump is the bump of the pustule. I bring my brush in and I touch the tip and I get wash. It basically breaks over the top of the pustule, and then you get like a ring of brown or whatever color wash around the pustule, because it kind of runs to the crevices, right? So you let that completely dry, and then I just come back with like a bleached bone color or a cream color, and I just touch the top of the pustule. So now you've got this thing where it's got like a kind of a darker ring around the bump, and at the top of the bump it's white, and then it looks like a zit, looks like a whitehead, you know what I mean? And I did that a lot on that fetid bloat drone, and I do it on my putrid blight kings and all that stuff. That's what I find to really kind of draw out the sort of grossness, you know. The other trick is that once you're all completely done with it and you've sprayed it with some sort of dull matte coat or whatever, you go back in the gooey parts. You go back at the parts where you can see like maybe open sores and stuff like that, and you use a gloss varnish, and you put the gloss varnish on there, because then it makes those parts look wet, and that kind of helps to make the nurgly grossness kind of move along too. So that's where that's at. JP Got Rocket says, for wounds, throw a little brown in there as well for coagulation. That's also a very good point. Yep. VJ Morph says, this totally worth warming your rattle cans before spraying, no matter what the weather is. That's a good point too. Vengeful D20 says, what's this too cold to rattle can you keep saying? And then saying from the south. Yeah, up here in Wisconsin, one of the big reasons that airbrushes are very popular up in here in the northern parts of America is because there's an enormous amount of the year where it's just too damn cold to go outside and do that, any kind of rattle can stuff. And I'm not even talking about like it's too cold to go outside, like it's too cold you need to like 3 coats. I mean, it's just the rattle cans just won't work very well. Yeah, like it gets below 60-ish degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know that you should go outside and rattle can. I'm not saying you shouldn't go outside. Don't get me wrong. But the rattle can under 60 degrees is not going to work real well. The paint's going to be a little globbier. You're more likely sometimes to sort of get a real powdery look when you do the priming and stuff like that. So watch out for that. For Nurgle, according to Marius, it's very important to play with a lot of different shades of red, green, and violet. Violet is also important too, because green and violet and some red can also come across as looking ill. Anything that you could kind of paint zombies with is also a good idea for Nurgle very frequently. Hence the like poxwalkers and stuff from the new 40k starter box and all that jazz. Let's see here. JP Got Rocket says, I'm used to pick up games at stores with strangers. It's the only way to get any games many times in my life. Those strangers become more casual friends as a result. Yeah, definitely. I've talked about this before. We're still in progress on it, but my day job, we're working on an app, which is going to be something that will allow tabletop gamers, not just wargamers, but tabletop gamers of all stripes. So board gamers, collectible card gamers, RPG people, and us, the wargamers, will hopefully allow you to find people who live near you who want to play certain games and find events. It's not just going to be about finding people, it's going to be more about finding events. And I know I've talked about it a bunch of times, and we were going to have it done. The problem is that because we're self-funding it all, we've had a lot of regular business. We're not a business that just makes this app. We're a business that makes all kinds of apps, but we all want to make this app because there's 7 of us and we're all gamers. But regular work has been, which is good. It's very good to have lots of regular work, but it's been getting in the way because there's been a lot of it. So we're hoping to have it ready to go in the stores, because it'll be both available for Android and iOS. But we're hoping to have it out there before the end of the year, is definitely our goal. And so when it does, then I will tell you guys about it quite a bit. You will probably get a little sick of hearing about it, but I think it's going to be a great thing for getting people together. One of the hardest parts, and I've said this I don't know how many times, one of the hardest parts about wargaming, or in any kind of tabletop gaming, in comparison to, say, video gaming, and when I point here, I'm pointing towards the den, which is where the PlayStation is. When you want to play a multiplayer game in video gaming, you just go multiplayer, boop, and then it hooks you up with some people and you start playing. You can't do that with, obviously, wargaming, board gaming, RPGs. So that's what we're working on. We want to get people together for events, and then you're gonna, like JP was saying, you find people and then you start becoming casual friends, and maybe you make friends on Facebook or whatever, and now you're getting together for games and you're getting to play more. So we're working on it. It's still coming, for those of you who have been wondering. Dorn Jr. says, it's been my theory that why Games Workshop is so popular in the UK is because of the weather. And I'm assuming because you're saying it's raining a lot. That's kind of the reason that tabletop gaming has been very popular in the Wisconsin area as well. Dungeons & Dragons was started in Wisconsin, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, initially. The reason that Gen Con is called Gen Con is because it was originally started in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It was originally called the Geneva Convention, which is a takeoff on the Geneva Convention from World War II, which was also in Lake Geneva, but that's Lake Geneva, Switzerland, or whatever. So yeah, they were playing military-type war games back then. They would call it the Geneva Convention in its earliest days, 50 years ago, which is crazy to me. And then, yeah, so eventually it got shortened to Gen Con, and then it moved to all over the state. Eventually went to Milwaukee, and now it's in Indianapolis. And there's your history lesson on Gen Con for the week. Torch, no, not the Tinder of wargaming. It is not. It's going to be more based off of events. There will be the ability to put like a looking for players. Like, have you ever gone to a game store and in the back there's like a cork board, and that cork board is like it's got a, what do you call it? It's got like 3x5 cards on it that say, hey, we're looking for a cleric for our group, or oh, hey, me and my friends are looking for more people to play Settlers of Catan, or whatever. We're going to have that sort of thing in it as half of the app, but the other half of the app is you looking at the events that stores are listing in your area, events that people are listing that aren't stores, but it'll be actual events. When you go to a convention, a gaming convention, you don't look around for someone to play a game with. You go and look in the program and go, oh, there's a game of such and such at 3 o'clock, and then you go over there and you play that game with other people who want to play that game, and then you meet them. So there have been other apps out there that have just been like, oh, here's a bunch of gamers who live near you. Why don't you make some friends? We all know that that's not necessarily great, and that's why those apps never really made it, partially. We're looking at having that being a small part of the app, but the majority of it is, here are the events that are around you at the stores. Initially, when we first launch it, it's going to be pretty much stores only. And when I say initially, I mean like the first month. And then after that, you'll be able to put in other locations, public locations. Eventually, if you want to and say, hey, I'm playing Catan at my house, anybody who wants to come over can come and play. If that's what you want to do, you can do it. But we're also going to have controls built in, so you can say, I'm going to be playing Catan at my house. If you're interested, click this button here and you can send me a message and I can see if you're cool or not. And then maybe I'll give you my address, or maybe I won't. So we're also very concerned about privacy and things like that in the app and the whole deal. We've been working on it for a long time. It takes up a good portion of my general day jobbery. So I'm really looking forward to getting it launched. So yeah, again, like I said, more of that when it actually goes into beta. If you're interested, you can go to iamgame4.com, and there is so it's IAM Game4, which is spelled GAMEFOR.com. There's a place there where you can sign up. We'll be sending out information as soon as we start getting into the beta and things like that. We'll be sending out like a little e-newsletter, so you can put your email address in there and get more information. I will even try to put it here in the chat. I don't know if the chat will let me. I can't type for some reason. That's weird. So anyway, it's iamgame4.com, and you can go there. I think my keyboard died. Did my keyboard die? I hope not. That's where I keep all my keys. There we... I don't know. Anyway. So yeah, that's where that's at. You can check that out. Luckily my mouse still works. What else have we got here? Bill Hayworth, or Haworth, sorry, says, I've played D&D and known about Gen Con since the 80s, and even been in the Army since '03, and not until recently did I peg the joke behind Geneva Convention. Sometimes I'm just dense. No, it was never pushed real heavily after about the first 5 or 10 years. They just, people would just go, oh, it's just called Gen Con, and nobody exactly knew why. I think living in Wisconsin, and knowing people who went back in the 70s, that helped. But also then, if you got to go this year, the 50th anniversary, they had a cool museum, like actually on the 50-yard line where the Indianapolis Colts play, because they had taken over Lucas Oil Stadium, the football stadium that's right next to the convention center. So they had a museum right on the 50-yard line that was all about the earliest days of Gen Con and stuff, and it was really cool. So there was a bunch of interesting stuff in there that I went and read as well. Devin Jones says, I'm somewhat less concerned about the privacy consequences of the app than I am about Experian. Well, sure. I mean, we're not really going to take any of that information that you should be concerned about, really. So that's good. Yeah. JC Lander says, sounds cool. Will your app be coming to Europe? Yes, it will. Initially, we may just be starting it in one area, because this is the one downside, is that the first person that had a fax machine had nobody to fax. So the fax machine was not very useful. That being said, if you're the first person in, let's say, Poland who downloads our app, there will be nobody on the app because you're the first person anywhere near you. The idea about it being on mobile is that mobile is very geocentric. It's very easy to figure out where you are with mobile. Even if you turn off location services, if you want to see what's going on around you, you at least have to tell us what your zip code or your postal code is. So we can at least hit the database and come back and go, look, these are the events that are near you. So you can completely turn off the location services within the app if you don't want the app to know where you are for whatever reason. Again, Experian or whatever. But you still need to put in a zip code. The upside to that, too, is if you want to put in a zip code for a place that you're not at, but you're going there. Maybe you're going to be... you're going to be visiting Beverly Hills, California. So you put in 90210, because that's the only zip code that I know other than my own. Then you'll be able to go there and look and see what kind of events are going on there when you're going to be there, maybe in 2 weeks or whatever. So you've got that benefit as well. But yeah, the idea is that it's locational, but it's going to take some time to kind of grow. So we're trying to figure out exactly how we're going to sort of start that. Like the beta might just happen around us in Wisconsin, and then we'll kind of grow from there. We'll see how that goes. Matthew Knott says, that museum was awesome and to scale. That's true. The little museum that they had set up at Gen Con on the 50-yard line was the exact size of the building that the original Gen Con was held in, which was the Horticultural Center in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So you have this, normal regular-sized football field, American football field, and then you've got this little kind of thing in the middle, which is the thing, and that was the size of the building that the original Gen Con was in, which was kind of cool. So, yeah. Let's see here. Martin says, what's up with the GW kits these days? Am I the only one who fell in love with Warhammer thanks to the chance to assemble your models in like 100 ways possible? A lot of the regular models are still like that, like the Primaris, like the new Primaris, they're multi-pose. A lot of the new models are multi-pose, but also a lot of them, to be more dynamic, are not. The ones you buy, the singular ones that come in that little plastic clamshell, a lot of those go together one way. These guys over here also go together only really one way. But again, this game is, at least the modeling portion of this game is designed to be aimed towards beginners. You know what I mean? You're designed to like, the reason that it's push fit and quick is because you want to be able to crank through these guys quickly so you can start playing the game, and that's kind of the point. But the regular models, you can still, the normal type troops, you can still pose them in all kinds of different ways, generally, at least a lot of them. They also do have, right now, there's like those little kits where you get like 5 Plague Marines, or whatever Death Guard, or 5 Primaris, and they're in the colored plastic and they're also press fit. Or not the 5. I'm sorry. You get 3. You get 3 in a box for cheap, and then you can kind of crank those guys out. And those guys go together one way, but again, they're aimed a little bit more towards beginners. Whereas, like I said, a normal box of 10 Primaris Marines, they're very multi-pose and stuff like that. So it just has to do a little bit with being dynamic, I think. If you look at like a game like Malifaux from Weird Games, those models all pretty much only go together one way, but they are designed to be very dynamic and crazy poses and stuff like that. And they look great when you're done with them, but they're really hard to kind of, convert. Yeah, it's hard to say, I mean, there's certain things you want to be able to have the model to do and look like, and then there's how much customization you can have involved, and there seems to be a fine line between the two. So I know what you're talking about. Let's see here. Jason K says, and remember, Forge World is for advanced modelers. That's true. It's very true. Let's see, what else have we got here? Bill Haworth. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. I Am Game 4 is a neat idea, bud. I seem to remember Penny Arcade did a comic about a similar app, and I always wanted to see someone do that. Technology makes interesting things happen. There was an app a couple of years back called, I think it was called Game Finder. We did a bunch of research when we first started this project to look at, you got to do a bunch of competitive research and marketing analysis and stuff like that. There was an app, they had a Kickstarter and stuff, and it was called Game Finder or Gamer Finder, and I think you can still download it. But the trick is that it does the Tinder for gamers type thing, where you put in a profile and then you hit a button and it's like, oh, well, here's the 6 people who live near you. Send them a friend request, which is a big next step. You know what I mean? So that's why we're really aiming more towards, here are the events near you of the type of game that you enjoy. If you go to those events, you may meet people and then be like, oh, we are friends now. Great. And then you're going to have somebody else that you may have not known about, because it's really difficult right now to find events near you, right? Like, you've either got to search around on a bunch of different weird groups on Facebook. It's very easy to find a Warhammer Facebook group, but to find a Warhammer Facebook group near Manchester, where you live, that's a little bit more difficult. You know what I mean? So, actually in Manchester, it's probably relatively simple because you guys have a lot of clubs over in the UK, whereas over in America, we don't as much. But I digress. The point is that we want to be able to get it so that it's very easy. Otherwise you gotta go search each store's webpage or each store's Facebook page. And the idea is that stores and all this stuff will be able to dump all their information into this. I've gone through and interviewed 15 different store owners in the 100-mile radius around where we live, to find out like what they're looking for, what they expect. Most of them said, we don't want to have to put the information into the app and then also put it into Facebook and also put it into Google Calendar. And so we're working on a way where you can put it into the app and then have the app automatically through APIs put it on Google Calendar for you and put it on Facebook for you. So you enter it once and get it to go all kinds of places. That's been so far pretty well received by the interviewees. So that's something that I'm looking forward to. But yeah, it's going to work out pretty well, I'm hoping. So yeah. Sopa-chan says, Uncle Adam, would you still recommend gluing the Shadespire models, or is press fitting pretty secure? I wouldn't want an arm falling off after they've been painted. I glued them because that's what I'm going to do. I didn't use a lot. I used a little bit, but I still glued them. So that's what I would do. Dennis Bauer says, Armorcast Reaver Titan. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, but I do remember the Armorcast Reaver Titan. That was an old model back kind of when Games Workshop was telling a company called Armorcast, which mainly works in resin terrain, but they did used to have these big 2-foot, 3-foot Reaver Titans and stuff like that are old from the early 90s. And then now, then kind of Forge World came along and now they don't do that anymore. But I have seen them for sale at like Adepticon and things like that in the Bits Bazaar, so that's always kind of fun. What else have we got here? Got a lot of conversation back and forth. That's cool. Alice in Wonderland. I don't like the change of scale for the new Adeptus. I still have a lot of the old Adeptus Mechanicus and Epic figures. I never played Epic or any of that, so I don't have any like real frame of reference. Pardon the pun. for the scale of those models. I don't know that I'm going to be interested in that game, but I know there's a bunch of people that are, and I'm glad they're kind of working, that Games Workshop is working towards doing that, so that's fun. Let me see here. Sean Cavanaugh says, nope, Manchester is a pain in the butt to find good groups. Power gamers, we have loads of them. Chilled, mature players, not so much. Well, okay, but that's good to know. And hopefully with the app, once we get it, spread all out, will be pretty good for that. Mr. Armour says, no, Manchester's a good example. I recently joined a club 45 minutes south of Manchester, which has been there for a couple of years, but I'd never heard of it. It's a mile from my house. Yeah, it is interesting to me how that kind of stuff happens. So I ran a small little general tabletop gaming convention here in town for 11 years. Board gaming, RPGs, CCGs, some wargaming as well. 2001 to 2012. And ran it every year. I take that back. I missed 2004 because our venue wasn't working out and I was getting married. So we just didn't have it in 2004. But all those other years had the convention. And it's not a big town, 60, 70,000 people. And I would run into gamers. This is in the later years. This is in 2008, 2009, 2010. I would run into tabletop gamers and mention the convention, and they'd be like, oh, that sounds really great. I've never heard of that. And I'm like, are you new to town? Oh, no, I've lived here since I was a kid. I'm like, so in my mind, I'm not doing well enough in marketing to let you know in a relatively small town that a thing that you're very interested in, tabletop gaming, has a convention going on. So it's just weird how those things can miss. I was talking to one of the two main guys that runs Adepticon. And he told me, after I told him this little story as we were kind of talking about something, he told me he runs into Warhammer 40K players in Chicago who have never even heard of Adepticon. And I'm like, how does that kind of thing happen? Like, it's just amazing how you think that you're hitting all the cylinders and you're getting all the marketing out there and everybody knows about your stuff. But it's astounding how, like, Adepticon's been around for 15 years. It's the biggest wargaming convention in America. People who play wargaming and live in Chicago, which is basically where it is, have never heard of it. That's just, it's not that those people are bad. It's just that there's just ships passing in the night sometimes. You market and market and market, and you can do a lot more than you used to be able to with Facebook and internet and all that junk. But you're still going to miss people from time to time. So it's interesting. I'm doing a little bit of that now because I've got the new, for those of you that were there, I've got a little mini convention that I'm doing now for just wargaming, and it's called Tabletop, or it's called, it's TMX, the Tabletop Minions Expo. And last year it was beginning of June. It'll be coming up this year again, June 9th and 10th. I'll be announcing dates for sure very soon. But I'm looking forward to it. And anyway, but I'm mainly pushing it to people who are fans of the channel. I'm not trying to get local people necessarily around here who've never heard of the channel to come, so I'm not putting up flyers in stores and that kind of stuff. But, so hopefully I'm assuming that you guys, if you're paying any attention, have at least heard of it or whatever. That's great. Maybe you can't come. I totally get that. But I'm a lot more focused, which I'm a little bit more comfortable with. The whole concept of trying to scattershot, spread out to everybody, makes it sometimes kind of difficult. It seems as if the air conditioning just kicked in, which is... oh, that's not cool. All right, I'm going to turn it off. So you're probably hearing some extra noise. I'm going to use the app to turn off the thermostat, which is fun. All right. That means it's 10:30. Okay, at 10:30 it changes. Interesting. Let me see. What else have we got? Adam, what are your thoughts on nudity on models? Slanesh stuff mainly. My local store is pretty cool about it. I don't know. I see companies that make pinups. Like, it's not a pinup thing for Slanesh models. You get the demonettes and things like that, and a lot of them I think are topless. At least they used to be. I don't know about any new models that they've done for Slanesh. I know a lot of people are unhappy. Some people are unhappy because they feel like Slanesh is being kind of pushed underneath the carpet, especially in Age of Sigmar. But there, air conditioning went off. Yeah, I don't know. Like, pinup models I think are silly, but that's just me. It's not my preference. There are people out there who like to do that. They like to paint them up for display purposes and whatever. That's fine. Just not my cup of tea. I don't know. The game is... it's a good idea marketing wise to try to get newer players and specifically younger players in from a business standpoint. The younger they start, then hopefully the longer they'll be involved and all that kind of stuff. I get that. So then you have to be concerned a little bit about that, but that's really what the company's thing. If the company wants to make models that are topless demon ladies or whatever, that's up to them. They have to understand that. They should probably put maybe something on the box, probably, so that, if grandma buys that for you for Christmas, she's not going to be scandalized when later on when you build them and put them together and show them to her. That might be kind of helpful. But, it's totally up to the company making them, frankly. And if a store says, hey, don't bring any naked models into the store because it's a family environment, you have to do what the store says. If the store, like you said, your store is cool, then there you go. That's where it goes. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Tim J. Mills says, I don't hear any extra noise. Well, that's good. It maybe it's because your AC is running. That's also a good point. Yeah, it's very possible. Cesar Gallerini says, I love your videos, man. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Tim J. Mills says, stupid heat in September. I don't like it, Adam. Middleton is complaining here. So Middleton, I'm pretty sure you mean down by Madison. I totally understand what you're saying. It was 94 yesterday, 23rd of September, 94 degrees Fahrenheit. That was gross. Luckily not very humid, as I mentioned, so I did go out and do some priming once it cooled down a little bit. But and it wasn't that I needed it to cool down for the priming. I needed it to cool down so I was not too hot. That was basically me. But yeah, if it would have been super crazy humid yesterday and 94, that would have stunk. I would have never left the basement. Let me see. Dennis Bauer says that Slanesh, or Slanesh, I can never tell which way it's supposed to be pronounced, and I have a tendency to hop back and forth between the two pronunciations myself, needs to be Hellraiser / Event Horizon. Well, Hellraiser, I mean, you got the kind of like weird sort of bondage gear, sort of, whatever those guys are, the Cenobites, I think they're called. Event Horizon, I haven't seen Event Horizon in a really long time. I just remember there being a lot of shredding of people, and the spaceship was angry. I remember that. I need to figure that out. Let me see. Well, the grim darkness of the far future is not a particularly family-friendly environment. That is true to some degree. That's the thing, is that, like, you have to... I don't know, like, wargaming in general... And I'm not a parent, so I've really got no dog in this fight. But my question is, like, really young kids, should really young kids be playing war games? It's all about trying to shoot, your guns or split in twain with your swords your opponent, So I don't know. That's a good question. Again, like I said, since I'm not a parent, I really don't have a lot to say about it, because I probably ought not. We have 4 cats. I don't let them play wargaming at all, because they basically just end up stealing the pieces and putting them underneath the couch. But yeah, no, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I think from a business perspective, the businesses have to probably look at it from the fact that you should probably not try to target really young kids. But once you hit maybe 12, 13, it's not so bad. Like this box, the Shadespire box, where's the thing? I think it said 12 and up. Yeah, ages 12 and up. So, and I don't know, that's really more about the complexity of the game than it is about the theme, I think. Because really the theme of the game is that these people who are good, quote unquote, versus these guys who are bad, quote unquote, are fighting and trying to kill each other. So, but I'm fine with it. And again, I'm an adult, so I can do that. But yeah. David Ebbison says, I just ruined 10 skeletons with a bad primer. Any easy way to get the primer off? Well, I'm sorry to hear that. Skeletons. It depends on the primer. If you use like a Krylon fusion type primer, like the camo stuff that I like, that is a lot harder to get off the plastic, which is kind of the point. If it was some other kind of primer, just like a regular sandable auto primer or white primer, you can try soaking them in either simple green or super clean. Simple green is green colored, super clean is purple. You can get that a lot of times at automotive stores. You can get it at hardware stores and stuff like that. And then you can dump it into like a Tupperware thing or a plastic dish or something like that. Put your models in there, let them soak overnight. Go at them a little bit later on. Put some gloves on. Go at them with a like a toothbrush, like an old toothbrush, not a good, but not one that you're still using. And you can also use isopropyl alcohol. Depends on what they're made out of. If they're plastic, you want to be a little bit more gentle. If they're metal, I don't know if you have metal skeletons, but if you do, you can even use brake fluid, technically, like DOT3 brake fluid, and you might be able to get that stuff off. It takes a little bit of work sometimes, and that's why, that's the one downside to rattle can, is that depending on, even if you've got all your settings right, like it's not too humid, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, sometimes if the can is old, the spray will come out funny, and then that's not great. And then you need to, what I try to do is, if it's a can that I'm a little nervous about because I've had it for a long time, let's say, I will spray it on something else first, like a plastic spoon or whatever, and see what it looks like and go, oh wow, that's really fuzzy, and then I'll get rid of that can, because primer can go bad, like just sitting in the can, sitting on a shelf. It can get even worse if you leave it in your garage over the winter and then it gets frozen and then it gets warm and it gets frozen and it gets warm. That turns out to be actually not great for primer, so don't do that. If you're going to prime and stuff like that and you live in a place like I do where it starts to get really crazy cold, bring the primer in the house, put it in a closet, put it in your basement, whatever. Store it indoors so it doesn't freeze, because that messes it up. Let's see here. Newsed says, oh, I almost missed the stream, but I had to sushi. Ooh, well, sushi is pretty good. I can see that. Tim J. Mill and Urban Blom both say isopropyl alcohol to get rid of that primer, and it's definitely the case. Let's see here. Nightwolf says, so stores are supposed to limit the patrons spending money in the store by not allowing them in a store due to naked models and kids being in the store. It depends on the store. Depends on what they want to do. You know what I mean? If they want to be a child-friendly place and a family-friendly place, then that's their decision. And they may make that decision and say, you can't have naked models in the store because we've got a lot of kids in here playing Pokemon. You know, that's totally up to them, because they're looking at it from, frankly, what's best for the longevity and the health of the store. If they are a little bit more older gamer oriented, they don't sell Pokemon and they don't sell like games aimed at kids, and they only sell like board games and maybe war games, and they don't have a lot of kids in the store, there's not a lot in the store for kids, then they can make a different decision. Totally depends on the store. Whatever the store wants to do, the store gets to do. That's their store. You know, they are not owned by the government. They are a private institution, and they can set the rules that they want for their institution. That's just the way it works. Let's see. Brush on primer we're talking about. Get a cheap electric toothbrush from the dollar store. Save so much time when stripping models in isopropyl. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. I have a inexpensive, it was like $7 or $8, like one of those Sonic toothbrushes. You just put like a AA battery inside there and stuff. Like there's the really super crazy expensive Sonic ones, and there's the cheaper ones that are like Oral-B or something, like some brand like that. And it was, like I said, $7 or $8. And when I'm done with it, like, because it doesn't have a replaceable tip because it's only $7, when it's done, that's going to be my new scraping off the models brush. So yeah, definitely. David Turner says, Dettol, great for stripping. Smells a bit though. I bought a bottle of that finally, because you can't find it very easily in America. I found a bottle of it on Amazon, got it shipped, and it's been sitting on my desk at work because after purchasing it, I came across a bunch of people talking about how absolutely horrible it smells, and so now I'm a little nervous about using it. So it's been basically just sitting at work, and I'm hoping it doesn't like get knocked off and break, because it'll smell up work real bad. So it's a plastic bottle, so it probably won't happen. JP Got Rocket says, DOT3 brake fluid if you're really desperate. Yes, that's also true. That stuff's not great to get on your skin, so try not to do that. Also, I don't know if I'd use it on plastic. I probably would not use it on resin. If they're metal models, you could get away with it. Some people will tell you, yeah, it's fine for plastic. I would be careful. Let's see here. We've got Uncle Adam. I am shocked that we're 20 minutes off the end of the chat, and apparently nobody has mentioned that your wife's cello case resembles a robot. That is practically a tradition right now. Someone mentioned it yesterday in the accidental Patreon one, but yeah, I was going to put a hat on it, and I didn't. I keep forgetting. I do have a fez right here. I could just throw it on there, but I haven't. 6Gunner86. I made an observation about spray priming. I always prime right on the sprue. When I primed assembled minis on top of newspaper, the paint surface was terrible due to the particles which bounce back. Huh. I've never had that trouble. I've never had the particles bounce back. That's interesting. What I have started doing now, I did that with these guys yesterday, is that, and by these guys, I mean, moving the mouse, these guys, not that, that's the video from, what the heck button did I hit? Oh, that button. There we go. What I've been doing lately when I go outside to rattle can with these models is I have a tendency to use, it's a use for old sprue. So rather than having these guys sit flat on a piece of cardboard, which I then spray, and then they sort of stick to the cardboard and you have to kind of peel them off, I stick them to, basically the sprue acts as like almost like a little, what do you call them? In baking, when you're baking like cookies and stuff like that, you put them on a baking rack. So it's not, so it's kind of raised up and it's on like a lattice. So these guys are almost then at that point raised up on the sprue, and then the sprue can get paint all over it because there's nothing left on it anymore. So I save my sprues for that, and then it just works out pretty well. And then eventually the sprues start to get a little fuzzy because they've got so much primer on them, and then I can chuck them. But yeah, that's working out well for me as well. I've not had that problem where the primer or whatever bounces back up and hits the models. That's a new thing. At least I haven't heard of it. Kodiak Fury says, I just got here. Hello from Cleveland. Hello. And on the topic of stripping, I use LA's Totally Awesome. I've heard that a bunch of times, and I keep forgetting. I never go to the dollar store. I don't know why. We've got a bunch of them in town. I just never seem to go to them. I never think of it. Every once in a while I go to the dollar store, like rarely, but when I do, I go and I buy a bunch of stuff because I'm like, oh, this is $1. That's great. But I've been told time and time again that LA's Totally Awesome is at most dollar stores, and that I should pick it up because it will strip models very well, and I keep forgetting. I should try to make a trip this week. James Anderson says Mentholated Spirits is great for stripping. I've moved away from everything else. Okay. Does that even work with plastics? Because I have not tried it with plastics. Guillermo says that brake fluid is okay with metal, but with plastic you have to keep an eye on it so it doesn't melt, and resin is a big no-go. Yeah, I totally make that. Totally makes sense. I can definitely see that. Keith Miller says, does isopropyl alcohol damage resin / fine cast? I don't know. I would suspect, but I don't know. One way to try it out is if you've got any leftover fine cast sprue, if you dump it into some isopropyl and see what happens to it. Does it get bendier? Does it get squishy? Does it, does it bubble up and disappear? That would be a good way to check it out. Nightwolf says, I am not the only one that primes on the sprue then. Well, no. I have never primed nor painted on the sprue, but evidently some people do. That would drive me nuts because I would get it all done, and then I have to clip it off, and I have to fix all the parts that got clipped because there would be no paint there. That's just me. If it works out great for you, awesome. Talking a lot about brake fluid. Frankie Lee Bailey says the DOT3 brake fluid will dissolve most resins, GW, Spellcrow, Forge World, and the old GW Crapcast too. So, yeah, sounds like I would not use brake fluid on resin, FYI. Sean Cavanaugh says, that's a great idea. My models always stick to the newspaper. Thank you, as I'm just about to prime an army. Yeah, I've just started doing that recently. I've got all this leftover sprue, and I'm like, I should do something with it. And it just made me think of like a drying rack or a baking rack, where you put all the cookies on the rack because then they don't stick to whatever you put them on as they cool down. Cooling rack? I don't know, whatever. Anyway, it works out nicely for models not sticking to whatever you're trying to spray paint on them if you're outside doing rattle can and whatever. Hobo says, I always blue tack my models to a ruler and then turn and tilt as I spray when I'm priming. I do that if I'm doing it on airbrush. Like these guys, all these guys down here will end up on paint sticks. These 3 guys will end up on one paint stick, and these 5 guys will probably end up on another one unless I break them up 3 and 2. I'm not sure yet. But then it just allows me to be able to do the whole, what do you call it? It allows me to do the whole assembly line thing a lot easier. I did a video about using paint sticks to do assembly line painting a while back, which I wish I could pachow here, but I can't, sadly, because this doesn't do that. But yeah, if you go back and look through, I think it might be an Uncle Adam's Pro Tips about using paint sticks, but yeah, those are great. I like those a lot. But again, like I said, I don't like to do that if I'm trying to prime with a rattle can, because I'm going to get primer all over my hand. So, okay, let's see here. What else have we got? Where are we at for time? We got about 15 minutes left. Peter Pan says you can use a cookie cooling rack, one of those square metal grid thingies, to prime models. The overflow lands about a centimeter below the models and does not bounce back. Yeah, I could see that. It would work out well too. If you can find a cheap one or even a used one, that'd be great. But like I said, if you got enough sprues sitting around, it also works pretty well. And especially if you're using newer sprues, let's say from Games Workshop, because they put so many more pieces so much more tightly onto the sprues that the sprues are closer together, so they act as a nice kind of mesh to hold up your models. The older sprues, like if you tried to use like a sprue from a Rhino, the pieces are so spread apart that it would never really work unless you were using like a really big object. So, what else have we got here? Simple green is what I use, says Allison. Yeah, simple green. I like super clean, which is the purple stuff, a little bit better, but yeah. Stripping blotchy pre-paints is still my bane. With most pre-paints, can't you just paint right over the top? Like, most people just paint right over X-Wing stuff. And even, like, hero clicks and stuff like that, Most people just, like, prime over it and then paint straight from there, from what I know. Jason K says, yeah, but if you use meth to strip your models, next thing you know, you'll end up taking apart your TV, cleaning your bathroom with a toothbrush. Not that kind of meth. It's mentholated spirits. It's not the same thing. Six Gunner says, I had to try the rack technique too. Sounds good. I have to prime my models because winter is coming. It's true. Winter is coming. You wouldn't know it to look outside right now, but yeah, it's coming. Nightwolf says, I watched the old Airbrush video of yours, Adam. When we'll be getting one finally, what compressor do you suggest to buy at Hobby Lobby? Also, just live south of you in Racine. The one that I got from Hobby Lobby was at the time, I think, the most expensive one they sold, which means it was maybe about $350 or so. But if you go in there, if you're going to go to Hobby Lobby to buy your compressor, make sure, like on your phone or whatever, that you go to the Hobby Lobby website. They've got a coupon almost all the time on that website, and it will even say weekly coupon or whatever, like right on the website. And it will give you 40% off any single item that's not currently on sale. So if the compressor is not currently on sale, you can get 40% off just by showing them on the phone. They type in the number and then you're fine. That's what I did. The compressor that I use that I got from Hobby Lobby is called a Sparmax TC2000. So it's Sparmax, which is SPARMAX, possibly two X's, and then it's a TC Thomas Charles 2000, and I like that one a lot. Like I said, it's quiet. It's just worked out really well for me. I've had it for a couple of years now, so yeah. Let's see here, Uncle Adam, which airbrush do you recommend for painting? I use the Iwata Eclipse HP-CS. I also have an Iwata Neo, which is a cheaper one. I use that more for like varnishes and stuff like that, but for regular paint I use the Iwata Eclipse. Pretty much any brush is probably fine, especially as you're starting off. The Iwata has lasted me a long time, and it's been in really good shape because I take relatively good care of it, but it has not caused me any trouble, so that's kind of a nice thing. You spend a little bit more up front, you don't have to probably buy another one later on, that kind of thing. If you buy something real inexpensive, then well, maybe it might not last as long and then you have to buy it again, but it depends. Again, since none of us most of us are not doing this professionally. I'm sure that there's probably some commissioned painters possibly watching this at some point, but most of us, because we're doing it from time to time, like I've always been a big fan of buying slightly less expensive tools that I don't need to use on a daily basis. Like I will buy a $20, Orbit sander at like Lowe's because it's not something I use every day in my job. Like if I was going to be using it every day in my job, I would want to spend a lot more on it to make sure that it stands up to the test of time. But if it mostly sits in the cabinet in the basement and I only use it 5 times a year, I can spend less money on it, and it's fine. Same thing with airbrushing. Since I don't airbrush constantly, I could have spent a little bit less on the airbrush probably. That would have been fine. But on the other hand, then it lasts a lot longer. But yeah, like if I was a competitive painter constantly trying to win awards, or if I was a commission painter constantly having to crank stuff out because I'm being paid to do so, yeah, I would definitely spend a lot more than on the brush, most likely. The Rust Belt Blacksmith says, I got here late, so someone may have already said it, but I prime my models on bottle caps. I really miss the wide mouth caps. Also, I paint them that way. I never touch the model. Yeah, I put them on, and I've talked about this in the past, and I made a video about it. I put them on generally pill bottles. If there's a bunch of models that need to be the same, like let's say I'm painting a bunch of skeletons, then I stick them on paint sticks. If the guys all kind of look the same, like these Bloodbound dudes, these corn bros, as it were, they're all going to look kind of the same. So then I can sort of, like I said, assembly line them. So I put them on a paint stick so I can get at them. But if I have any kind of HQ units or stuff like that, then I usually use some blue tack or poster putty or whatever, stick them to the lid of a pill bottle, and then I can hold that like a big handle, and then I don't have to touch. It's not good to touch the base as you're painting because it's a small little area to touch, and you might flip the model. You're holding the model like this all the time, right? And you're painting and you're painting and you're trying to get over here, and then all of a sudden you just flip and you just you lose it, and you don't want that. So that's why I generally stick them to something big. I've got big mitts, so it's important for me to hold on to a big thing, and I've got lots and lots and lots of pill bottles, so it's not that big of a deal. I've seen other people use blocks of wood. I've seen other people use pieces of dowel, like big thick dowel, like an inch or inch and a quarter diameter, and they get a big bunch of it at the store, and then cut up pieces with a saw so that they're maybe about yay big. It makes a nice handle to hold on to. It's just that kind of thing makes it easier because then you can twist and turn and paint upside down and get it from every little angle. Whereas when you're trying to hold the model like this, but trying to paint up inside there, you could easily drop it. But if you've got a big, nice handhold to grab onto, it makes it a lot easier. So, let me see here. Traffic Hazard says, I've never had issues with spray bouncing back, but I once followed bad advice to use a large box as a spray booth for rattle cans, and the turbulence caused overspray mist to frost the models. Yeah, I see people a lot of times who like to use a box to do it. I never do that because of partially that same sort of reason. I don't know that the frosting is necessarily the case, although, well, if it's not so much the paint, but the propellant maybe bounces around inside the box a lot more, that could cause frosting, especially for varnishes. I could see that. Yeah, I don't generally do that. Six Gunner asks, Adam, how many years have you been in the hobby? I just realized I had played and painted 21 years since I was 10. Well, gosh. I mean, I first played my first war games of any kind. I played BattleTech way back a long time ago. Cat just did a somersault. I played BattleTech probably in middle school. My very first kind of gamer type game, I played D&D starting in 5th grade. But I would say it was probably middle school when I started to play some BattleTech here. And then I was like a kid that I knew who had the box set. And we weren't even playing with miniatures. We were playing with cardboard cutouts. They used to make like these like rectangular cardboard cutouts, the little plastic thing you stick on the bottom so they stand up. And that's how we played BattleTech for a while. And then I didn't really play any types of war games for a while until I got to college, at which point my good friend Peter, he showed me Space Hulk for the first time. And so we were playing Space Hulk, which is basically a gateway game. Did its job, I'd have to say. So that was 91 probably. So that's more than 25 years ago, right? So yeah, I've been doing it for a while. But like I said, my very first wargaming experience was BattleTech, and it was not even playing with miniatures. It was just playing with the cardboard standees. And then I got back in college for a while into BattleTech for a bit here and there. And then I did not play any kind of 40K and stuff. I really didn't play 40K until 5th edition. Like beginning of 5th edition is when I started getting into it, because I liked painting, and I was getting into that and trying to find skirmish games. There were not nearly as many skirmish games as there are today, but I was trying to find different little skirmish games here and there because I didn't really want to paint huge armies. I only wanted to work on small stuff, and I did that. I started getting into terrain and blah 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 and all that. And then 5th edition, I started getting into actual 40k. My first army was Tau, so that's the whole Tau for sale thing. If you've ever seen, Tau Salesman Sam, I was getting rid of the Tau at Adepticon, and then I switched over to Chaos, and then it's gone from there. But yeah, so I've been doing it for a pretty long time. The actual painting and stuff like that, though, probably only since, I would say, the mid to late 90s, really, I guess. So probably about 20 years, about that. I would say that, as far as just painting and stuff like that. But the actual playing, I started in middle school, so that was in the early 80s. What else have we got? Kelly says, hey, just wondering, what do you think? Is there a reason for Krylon over Rust-Oleum? I like the Krylon a little bit better. A big portion of it, frankly, is the nozzle. I like the nozzles on the Krylon paints better than the Rust-Oleum. The Rust-Oleum paints have this big kind of white fat nozzle, which you kind of have to really sort of crank on to get down. So if you're doing a bunch of spraying, eventually your finger starts to get a little sore. The Krylon ones have this much finer nozzle that you can turn as well. So if you can change the direction sort of the fan that you're spraying, and it's just like a little tiny trigger that just pushes down on a metal, kind of like just a little metal post. And so it's a lot easier to spray longer with the Krylon. I kind of like the Krylon surface that comes out of the Krylon camo colors a little better than I like the Rust-Oleum surface. This is Rust-Oleum surface, these folks over here. And it's not bad. Like, I have had some of the Rust-Oleum surface be almost a little shiny. Man, I wish these guys would get into focus. What is going on over here? There we go. So this is pretty good. It's still pretty flat, but I would almost say this is edging towards satin. Man, there's a lot more blue in there than I thought. I'm going to have to fix that up. That'll be step one before I start painting gold, is I'm going to have to try to get rid of a little bit more of this blue. It's just the bright lights and the camera, I think, that are bringing it out so much more. But yeah, I don't know. That's the only reason why I've been that the nozzle and the surface, I think, is why I like Krylon a little bit better than I like Rust-Oleum as far as the camo colors are concerned. Drawn Steel Hero says, memory serves, I got into it with 40k 2nd edition, but not long before 3rd came out. So that's been a long time. Good point. Sean Kavanaugh says, 29 years ago, I got into this at 10 with HeroScape. Old school, very old school. I never played HeroScape back in the day, but I know a lot of people who that was also their first big gateway game. That was a big one, too. People get into fantasy and stuff like that, so that's really cool. JP Got Rocket says, 1987, started gaming with the Star Wars RPG and MERPs. Star Wars RPG would have been West End Games. There is a local-ish group in the Wisconsin area that is still running that game. They're not a company. Well, maybe they're a company. I don't think they are, though. But they're a group called Sparks. You can see them at a lot of local conventions in the Wisconsin area, and they run this huge, persistent world of Star Wars, but they're still using the D6 system, the old West End Games. And if you've gone to like a convention in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and played with them in the past, like for the first time, and then you go to a different convention and play with them, technically they can go look up your character, which is why it's like a persistent world sort of thing. It's this huge deal. I think you can look them up at Sparks. You can look them up online. If you just type in Sparks Star Wars D6, I bet you'd find out a bunch of information. MERPs was Middle-earth role-playing system through Iron Crown Enterprises. We used to play not MERPs, but Rollmaster in college, but we played Rollmaster with the whole Lord of the Rings thing, all the Middle-earth stuff, but we didn't play MERPs. MERPs was like the slightly simpler version, I guess, of Rollmaster. Rollmaster, otherwise known as Chartmaster a lot of times. The guy who was our DM, he was really good at it, and he really knew that system, so it was a lot easier for us. If we would have been figuring it out from as newbies, we would have all died. It's Rollmaster is a difficult system, but Peter was really good at it. So Tim J. Mill says, I love the West End Games Star Wars books, especially their adventure journals. Yeah, some of those were really kind of cool. It's amazing how many different companies have taken a run at Star Wars role-playing, and how different groups have enjoyed or disliked different versions at different times. It's a long history. Someone should make a documentary. Maybe not. It's just about time to go. I want to thank everybody for coming and checking out the Shadespire stuff. Like I said, later this afternoon, I'm going to start painting these folks and putting some skin tones on all these shirtless corn bros and putting a lot of gold on the Stormcast men and women and going from there, trying to cover up all this extra blue. Man, that's weird. Like, because if I look at it, I don't see it. But when I look at it under the daylight balance lights with this camera, I mean, I obviously see it under here. But yeah, otherwise I don't see the blue as easily until I get it under the camera. As I've said in the past with a video, if you shoot with a camera, some of your models, you will find mistakes that you otherwise did not see. That's just another thing that shows how right I am. That's so rare that I'm that right. Anyway, so again, thanks for everybody who came by, and if you're interested in Shadespire, like I said, I believe it's coming out. It's supposed to be coming out in October. I don't know when in October. And there's been, like we've seen, there's been some rumors about price, but I've not heard the price yet. So rumors are about $70. We'll see. But I'm looking forward to painting it. I'll be posting pictures and stuff with as I go along with the painting, probably on Facebook and Instagram and potentially Twitter. So if you follow me in at least one of those places, you'll probably see some stuff coming up. And I have a suspicion my Friday video coming up next week might be about Shadespire. So we're not sure, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's pretty much it. So I hope that you have a great rest of the day wherever you are. And thanks for watching. And we'll see you again, at least here, in 2 weeks.